Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is the 5 foundations for a strong marriage.
Now, don't discount the term foundations. We're going to make sure that this is practical, that you can see the implementation into your real life and conversations that you two can have. And it's actually great timing because we stopped by our new home that we're building right now, and we've actually been able to see this getting built from the ground up. We got to see them digging the plumbing and actually laying the foundation. And it's funny because we've been ordering ahead of time, like these really nice light fixtures and decor. But the thing is, if you think about it, I could put the prettiest stuff in there, but if the foundation was crap, or it had cracks in it, the value of the home is obviously not going to last. We wouldn't stay in it long. And so that analogy of thinking about your marriage as this home and the foundation being a requirement for the two of you to be able to not only stay together, but thrive. And people, we notice when we talk to them, whether they've been together a year, 5 years, 20 years, 40 years. I mean, we've talked to couples all over the lifespan of a relationship. So often they kind of stepped over these steps of building the foundation. And we'll talk about, what these really are.
Yeah, and you can sort of get away with it for a while until you either start to bump up against some real challenges in life, and then you realize the instability that's there. And that usually shows up through your lack of conflict resolution, your inability to communicate beyond like personality differences, and needs start to conflict. So you kind of see that once life starts to happen. And we've been really saying that a lot because you can't avoid that part, right? We talked about the model of vulnerabilities, external stresses, and adaptability. And you just can't even factor in all of the external stresses you're going to face. And a part of life is not that you avoid those things, but that you're able to voluntarily face those together, being equipped with the tools so you can not only become stronger, which can seem a little conceptual, but I think the part of life is for us to grow in our character, grow in, you could say, our purpose, and you just really don't get that kind of development if you're just avoiding hard and challenging things. So the point is, you're going to face these things. Are you going to be unequipped? Or are you going to be equipped? Because then you are just going to have to course correct now as you go through life. And that's really the key for me on these 5 foundations as we go through. It's that, what are you going to be course correcting to? You're going to have to course correct. There's no business, there's no sports team, there's no government, there's no country, there's no leadership anywhere that doesn't course correct. It's that, what are you course correcting to?
Yeah.
And what we want to invite you into is you're really course correcting these 5 foundations.
Yes. And we're about to go into the first one here in a second, but I do want to say hello to all of the new listeners because we are so grateful that basically thousands of new listeners are listening every single week from all over the world. And we are so glad that you're here. And for those of you who, as you are hearing this episode and all of our episodes, and you're like, okay, I want to be able to implement these, have more conversations, write things down, we really recommend having our Steps to Rebuild a Marriage guide as a place to really implement these into your relationship. So make sure you go to the links in our show notes so that you can actually get those guides because they're just must-haves for your relationship. I want to introduce this first one because, all right, it's going to be kind of the obvious one. However, we're going to make it really practical, and it's love. Okay, and I know you're probably like, wow.
Foundation 1.
Wow,
is
Freemans, love. I am shocked. How is love? But people misunderstand love. We think a lot of times that it is just this feeling, and it's like that surge of excitement in the beginning, the newness, the freshness. That's a feeling. That's often infatuation. And sure, you might have that association to loving someone, but love can endure challenges. How do you love someone when you've been together 30 years and you're like, oh, there's you again, and it just feels like, you're used to each other and you don't feel that same spark? Does that mean you don't love each other as much? No, that's a different thing. That feeling is different. And I know, Erin, you're going to go into the 3 parts of love and the triangle of love in a moment, but I'm going to bring a pop culture moment because here in the US, I know there's listeners around the world. You may not watch this, but Love is Blind. Okay, it's this really popular show here in the US, and everyone's fascinated because people are dating each other without seeing each other. And in fact, they propose without ever having seen each other's faces. And so the whole experiment is to prove love is blind. You can fall in love without seeing each other. And the thing is, maybe that's true. Maybe that's part of love. They love each other to a certain degree. However, as you watch them, because we watch this for research, that's what I say, entertainment and research. But as you watch them meet each other's families, try to live together, try to handle conflict and tackle real life situations, it is so evident that they do not have a strong foundation. And so they're shaky, they're wobbly. Building a foundation takes time, and everyone is so obsessed with falling in love because it's exciting, but that's temporary. And we have to focus instead on building these strong, resilient relationships that can, to not be cheesy, but stand the test of time. How do we love each other throughout the years? So Erin, will you describe this more?
Well, we covered this in a previous podcast, but there's a psychology principle that is called the triangle of love theory. And it's just a good basis to think about love so that it's not just this conceptual thing. And I'm also not trying to make love just practical, or I'm not trying to dumb it down to that, right? But it's a good way to think of it. You have 3 components of love, which is a great basis for us to come from here. And you have closeness, then you have passion, and you have commitment. So go back and listen to the episode if you want to go deeper into what those things are. But you can get the sense. And to your point about love is blind, it's not so much is love blind, it's can you build closeness without seeing someone? Is closeness blind? And the answer is, of course, yes. Now, there's, I think, more to the closeness. You got to live life. You have to have challenges come up and see how another person handles them. But the thing that it's not showing is, well, passion does have a lot to do with physical attraction. And then you have the commitment part. So what they're asking people to do is build closeness and jump into commitment without actually going through the parts of life to be committed to someone.
Right.
So that to me is where the breakdown is. So think about building love. We're just in the very first foundation, again, love, but you have to start on this journey together that starts with, not always the case, but it usually will start with passion, right? There's attraction. Then you need to start to build closeness. So you need the vulnerability, you need the depth of conversation, you need to understand the other person. A lot on values, which is kind of foreshadowing where we're going later. But then you can start to build that closeness. So now you have passion and closeness. And then as you live a little bit of life together, based on some of these other foundations, you see if you're aligned enough that you can commit to this person. So now you have the 3. You have the passion, the closeness, and the commitment.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean it'll always be there? No. So the second part of this first foundation being love is that you have to consider that all your interactions are then either a deposit or a withdrawal into this love account.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to not try to get too complicated, but okay, love is a balance of closeness, passion, and commitment. So you could think of, well, what actions can I be taking that are deposits into my partner feeling closer, they feel reassured about my commitment, or increases passion.
Yes, exactly.
So we want to be filling this kind of love account. And then you've heard us probably talk about a lot before. You also want to consider, where am I making withdrawals from closeness, or being rigid, or being shut down that doesn't develop any further closeness, and or withdraws from the passion and or feeling of being committed.
And the reason you'll hear us remind you of the love account principle so often is because it can be so simple that you forget about it. And we need that reminder because it makes love something more top of mind. You can't just be like, well, you should know that I love you. I'm here. I'm still in the house. And so make sure that you really learn throughout our episodes about the love account, that you implement that. That's why we have our 30-day couples challenge, so that you can actually focus on keeping your love account full and not making those withdrawals, as you said, Aaron. So those are some parts of love. We want to get to these other foundational elements of a strong marriage. So the second one is awareness. And I know you're probably like, Freeman's, I've never heard something like that before. Awareness is a foundation to a marriage. Well, we're talking about awareness in two senses. First off, we have to have self-awareness. We see couples all the time who love each other immensely, so they think, and one or both of them lacks self-awareness. They do not understand what their triggers are, how to change their patterns of conflict and how they communicate. They don't understand things like their attachment style and how that is playing into how they form a bond and how they handle differences with someone. They don't understand their patterns that affect the other person. So we have to have that self-awareness. Otherwise, our programming, our psychology, even from last episode, if you didn't listen to that one, we talk more about our psychology and how it affects a relationship. But if we don't have self-awareness, then our mind, our patterns, our habits will take over and oftentimes not lead to the outcome that we want. If you guys met me and saw how I operated in relationships prior to Aaron, so over a decade ago, you would be like, no, that is not Jocelyn. There's no way. Not the Jocelyn that I listened to on the podcast, because I had to expand and deepen my self-awareness. I did not understand myself. I just blamed other people. When I was triggered, it was their fault. When I acted a certain way, it was their fault. And I felt as though I had no control over it. So that's the first piece about this awareness. Second piece is about your awareness of the strength and growth areas of the relationship. Do you want to speak to that part, Aaron?
Yeah, and this is reference to our family meeting guide. If you have that, then you know we have a weekly template, a quarterly template, and a yearly template. And it's the quarterly one that we're referring to here. And it's really that you take inventory of your current satisfactions in each of the core areas of a relationship. Right, anywhere from communication to conflict resolution to parenting, intimacy, finances. And this is a big miss. Couples, well, the individual, whatever your current satisfaction is, you make an attribution that it's the same that your partner has. It's like, I feel the level of satisfaction or intimacy right now is like a 6, let's say. It's like, okay, so my partner's probably the same. And you don't even think that thought, like, what is my partner's?
Yeah.
You just think, our communication is going, pretty well. It's like a 7. It's like, well, it is for you, but you don't know necessarily that that's how your partner is perceiving or experiencing the communication from you. So it really is very important to have the awareness of each of your scores for your strength and growth areas and your level of satisfaction, because otherwise you just make these assumptions and then you don't check in or actually make any changes to the places where your partner's satisfaction is starting to dwindle or go down, and you don't ever check in on it so that those needs go unmet. And that's when it's like all of a sudden you get like this big sort of outburst that seems to be out of nowhere. And it's like, those are a lot harder to deal with. So checking in on this area of, hey, where's our satisfaction at in these core areas?
There's two things I just want to underscore about that because it's so important, is that we find couples will hold it in. We're just too busy. We got to take care of the kids. We got to work. We got things to do. We don't have time for this. And then all of a sudden it gets brought up and you empty out all of these frustrations mid-argument. And then you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. What am I supposed to address first? You're now suddenly telling me all these places that you're disappointed. So it makes you feel more powerless and overwhelmed when you do that.
Caught off guard.
Yes, caught off guard. But then the other part of what you said, Aaron, is like you're not able to then make changes fast enough for each other. And then, it does lead to things like resentment or disconnect. And so that's why we have you do this quarterly with our family meeting guide. So let's go next. We've covered love, awareness, And the two parts of awareness, both the self-awareness and awareness of your strength and growth areas and where you each feel you are. Third foundation is your values. Your values are more important than you realize. And in fact, Aaron and I go to and use our values for every big decision that we make. Or when we are facing a circumstance, a situation where we disagree or we see it differently, rather than us just sitting there battling against, here's how I think it should go and here's how I think it should go, we go to our values. And I promise you, if you watch us address things like buying this new home, handling things with Sky, handling situations with a family member, we go back to our values. So Aaron, you're great at explaining this. You want to describe how this is practical?
Yeah, a lot of times, and maybe it's from the business lens, we think that values are what we say, and you ideally want it to be, and we did an episode on this too, but values are really the underlying attitudes and motivations for you to take action. So it's not just what you say, but ideally you want what you say and then how you act to be pretty similar. Mm-hmm. And we did the episode last week on your psychology, so we won't go too deep here, but the more and more we dive into this, you realize that your thoughts really are constructed around what you value. And so in psychology, again, this is just what's called your schema. These are the most foundational knowledge blocks in which your perception of the world and the perception of yourself is then built on. And then there's even further that your memories get consolidated. But I say that because this new information that you take in actually gets consolidated to fit into your current value structure, or what some would say your overall worldview. So we think that this conversation about what I value is just when I say that I value family or I value freedom, which is obviously like the whole entrepreneurship, thing is like, oh, I value family and freedom, so this is why I try to start a business. Which, maybe it is, but you have to just really get down to like brass tacks. It's what is your true value? And usually people outside of you could tell you what it is, because if they observed you over a few days or a few weeks, then how you act displays to me what you value.
Exactly, yes.
So, yeah, again, when you break it down psychologically, we literally see the world through value. And how I hate to say it this way, but we see things and people for their function, and the function for moving us towards what we value. So it does sound selfish in a way. I mean, it is if your value is not constructed to then further, be a contribution and service to others. So the point being here, though that was a lot to say, it's best if you can just identify 4 core values that ideally create your attitude, your motivation. From personal development, it would be called your way of being. Some would say this is how you could set your intentions for the day. But you need to remind you and your partner often about, hey, what is it that we actually value? Let that sink in. Let that be what creates your attitude and your motivations for the day, and then just compound that day over day, week over week, month over month. So we do have a list here just to kind of get this really practical, and then I'll let you jump in. But if you were just to consider these lists of potential values, think to yourself, what is it that I and then me and my partner would really value? How many of these do you want me to even do?
Why don't we just share our 4 first?
Okay, go ahead.
So our 4, which we return to often, number 1, family. And really, this is not for us like conceptual, like, oh, we value family. No, like all of our decisions go through, is this going to make us closer as a family? And the family, how we want to thrive with Sky, how we want to raise her, the kind of experience that we want her upbringing to be. So valuing family is how we filter everything. Even if we were given the greatest, most exciting opportunity, if it didn't align with family being rock solid, it'd be a no. Second value for us right now is legacy. Aaron, you're smirking. You want to say something about this one?
Well, no, I was waiting for you to get here because I want to have an honest conversation about sometimes they seem like they conflict, and sometimes you feel like you may have to prioritize one over another. So I'm not at all saying what you're saying was wrong. If I was just thinking about, if we were presented with an opportunity that would further our value of legacy that you just mentioned, we would weigh it heavily with the value of family. If the legacy part did take away from the family whatsoever, then yes, what you're saying is we'd be a no. But we would highly consider it if it really did align with this value of legacy for us.
Yes.
And I'll have you speak more to it, but I want to share one of the pieces. When you talk about values, it would have been easy for us to say freedom. And for a lot of people, it is freedom. But when you get down to it, I mean, you just got back from a great 3-day women's retreat. And much of people's starting up a business comes from the idea of freedom. But often, as you hear, you end up working a lot. So you don't really create freedom. You work and use all your time. So it's like, well, where is your freedom? Like, you create another job. Well, yes. And a job that we can dictate, that we could use our time how we wanted to. But I'm saying all this because there's a difference for us between the value of legacy and the value of freedom. And sometimes, though we do value freedom, there's many times I see that we sacrifice freedom for legacy.
Yeah. Because what matters to us is having Sky and us, of course, included in that, just truly have a remarkable upbringing. I feel like we could do a whole episode on this, but truly wanting her and then also the generations beyond us. And that the financial freedom, the legacy we can create, and also our mission, what we do here for marriages. This isn't like a hobby for us, you guys. This isn't, just a niche that we're going to, be interested in for a while. This is what we will be doing for the rest of our lives. Marriage and changing how relationships go and have them be for the better. That is our legacy that we want people to remember us for. So it's both Sky's experience as well as marriages beyond us. So that is a lot around that legacy value. Next, our third one is well-being. So for us right now, we really want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and that is one that can be tricky to prioritize. We can sometimes sacrifice like our workouts and I don't need to do that for myself. But it's like, no, like
eating more conveniently.
Yeah. We only have one body. We need to make sure our mental health is thriving. And so that's something that we continue to go back to of like, okay, we need to make sure that we're not saying yes to too many social things and that we're prioritizing our well-being. So that's third value for us. And then fourth right now is community. And so we really want to make sure that we have these strong bonds, not that we just have like friends, that we like kind of know what's going on in their lives, but truly strong bonds that we are growing together. We can lean on each other. We can challenge each other, and our families can grow up together. And so we could say a whole lot about those, but those are our 4. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, let me just say one last thing. So to really then take those values, which we want you to do listening, but then you can also sort of rate how much am I living that value. So what you're going to have to do is you're for sure going to have to sacrifice something else in your current lifestyle because you have not been living towards these 4 values. How can I know that? Well, because you didn't set them up. So in setting these up, you're going to realize, oh man, there's some things in our life, part of our lifestyle that do not align with these values currently. And the real testament to if this is a value of yours is that you're willing to sacrifice some of these other things. So if I look at these, I want to be honest here, family and legacy, I would say we are operating at a very high level in terms of our action being aligned with that. Well-being, we have never had a part of our core values until, would you say this week? Maybe even like this month, really, because it naturally happened.
Yeah.
When we didn't have a baby, it was kind of like
we just took care of ourselves.
Just part of the routine.
Yeah.
Now, I could say more for myself. Like, I don't feel as strong. I just had my 39th birthday. And yeah, there's definitely, I would put myself in a mid-range on this value. Like, I'm going to need to make some changes for well-being.
Yeah.
And then look at community. It's a very strong motivation for me. And I wouldn't say I have let the actions yet link in that I would say I'm I'm fully clear on the actions and I'm fully executing on the actions to have this community value be a high level
Yeah.
yet.
We're getting more aligned on that one for sure.
So all that being said, let me give you just a few to go off of as a listener, right? So you could choose, for example, values of respect, peace, honesty, health, adventure, growth, kindness, security. That's a big one. I mean, a lot of couples we talk to and work with are on the value of security. Giving, service, contribution, responsibility, happiness, success, family, wealth, community, simplicity, nature. So there's a lot there.
Yeah. So you can listen back at those and, just even really talk about it. They will show up for you what your values are. But let's make sure that we get here to the last two of these foundations, which are, and don't skip it, like they are very important. The fifth one, maybe the most important. But the fourth one is your vision. And the vision is important because, especially the longer you're together, because a lot of times you can reach those milestones. For couples, they oftentimes have the basics in terms of, okay, our vision is we want to start a family, for some, not all, but start a family, get the home, live in a place that we love, have the jobs that we love. Okay, those are great. And what happens when you achieve those? And it is proven that we become stagnant. We actually, when we're too comfortable, when we don't have something that we are aspiring for, it's not good for us. We become lazier, we put in less effort, we become less happy. And so we need to have something as a couple that's giving us direction. And it doesn't mean you have to want to start a business, a nonprofit. It doesn't have to be any of that. But it's something that you are aligned in creating that's going to keep you motivated. And I'm telling you, for us, this has been instrumental. For those of you who've been listening a while, you've heard us go through different seasons before having our daughter Sky, after having them, hardship, decisions to make. And our vision has been such a guide for us. It has given us that light at the end of the tunnel, or we both know what we're working hard for. Because without it, it can kind of feel like, what am I doing all this for? What are we doing all this for? Especially when you're going through maybe a rough patch or things are really busy and hard and you're up in the middle of the night with kids or working really hard in your careers. It gives you that purpose and that redirection. It also, having a vision, helps you clarify the decisions. So for us, value and vision do those things. And so an example that jumps to mind is when we talk to couples and let's say they're trying to determine, something like, should we have another child? Or, I'm considering this career change, but it's going to have X, Y, and Z repercussions on our time, our lifestyle. Okay, well, even though it's a good opportunity, even though parts of it feel exciting, does it align with your vision? And I think what's important is having different kind of timelines of vision, maybe knowing big picture, like you want to zoom out even 10 years ahead. But I think even really breaking your vision down into the next 3 years and then the next year, these different milestones, so you can see the progression of your decisions. Because think about it, all those decisions that you make, they feel small at times. However, they are culminating into a bigger and bigger impact. For example, if we kept sacrificing our health, as you were talking about, Erin, like we haven't been consistent with the workouts. If we kept doing that because we weren't connected to the vision is we want to be so vibrant and healthy as we age with our daughter, we would see in a few years that we aren't feeling like we're thriving and it's affecting our vision for what we want to be doing. So I went on for a bit. Erin, what do you want to share about vision?
No, that's right. I would just say it's the logic part. It's the next step from the values. So where the values are the attitude, the motivations, the vision needs to start to get logical into what are the steps, as you mentioned. And so that acronym being SMART, which I believe is specific, measurable, attainable, related, and timely. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, break that down. Even if you want to go to like this month ahead or 3 months ahead to really get into a place of you're clear that you're heading in the direction that you feel you're being called to in this life. Mm-hmm. And then obviously from your aligned values, you have to figure out that balance between I mean, why are we together as a couple, right? If for no other reason, it's like, well, that we can move towards realizing this future that we can only realize by being together. Now, I don't want to go into a conversation about togetherness and separateness because there's a part of fulfillment that each of you are going to need, like parts of a certain vision that is your unique calling. But you try to fit that into the overall vision that is for your marriage. So I just want to give you an example of what ours is, because in our courses, we do have a very particular process for creating your vision. It's not just this concept thing. So it has a couple of parts. I won't break it down, just read it. But our vision for our marriage is to feel freedom, contribution, and joy through teaching, creating family memories, and learning to empower millions of couples with the relationship skills to be connected and aligned no matter the challenge they face.
And I love our vision. And remember, yours doesn't have to be necessarily this big picture impact that you want to have like we do. Maybe that is. Maybe you actually do have something that you want to build or create together. But it truly is just, what do you want your life to feel like, look like? How do you know that you're going to be winning together as a couple and on path and be fulfilled? So the vision, so important. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so just to round this out, the fifth foundation is the tools and the skills needed. And this is what we do, right? So like every podcast episode, every web class, every guide, every workshop, this is where we hone in, right? All those other foundations are key. You want to lock those in, and then what we've given our life to is the skills. Now, to us, the most important skills being communication and conflict resolution, hence why we talk so much about repair and rebuild, expressing expectations, like all the things that we talk about from a skills perspective. And then there are other areas, right? The other ones become subject specific. So you'll need skills, right? Depending on your focus on, say, finances or parenting or time management or your professional life. You'll obviously need to acquire knowledge and skills. I mean, that's what it is to be a human. And it's just making sure that you focus on the skills specific to the growth of the marriage, not just the other outside categories of your life.
Every time we host our in-person couples workshop, couples will say to us, whether they raise the hand or say it to us privately, like, why wasn't there a relationships class in school? You know, whether it was high school or college. And think about that. Think about that failure in society of how we are not equipping our community and each other with relationship skills. You can be a great person. You can be so nice and so kind and have the values and all those things. And yet you might not be great at communication, or you really might struggle in times of conflict. And so this is where we have to be humble. And just like we would say, you know what, in my career, if I want to get to the next level, I'll need to go to a class and work on this and advance my skills, just like you talked about, Aaron. We need to do the same thing in our relationship. And this doesn't mean you have a weakness. This doesn't mean you are a crappy person or that you're less than. It's just, hey, I wasn't equipped with that skill. I struggle when it comes to repairing after conflict. No one showed me how to do that. Or I struggle to express myself for whatever reason. That's something I didn't gain, how to express myself effectively. That is okay to admit that. And that's the mentality we have with everything is, if I want to get better at this, all right, let me gain the tools and the skills. And so,
which links to the self-awareness part of the foundations.
Absolutely. And so really for you advancing your skills, your tools, stay plugged in to our episodes. Make sure that you're not just reading our posts, you're not just hearing the podcast, but you're working to implement this into your relationship. So for those of you who are new here, make sure you're listening to more episodes. We go into specific topics on every single one. And as a couple, have this mindset. So come to our workshops, by the way, if you want to get notified of our next workshop list. Unfortunately, you guys, we have a very long wait list for private sessions. You're welcome to join that wait list. But use our instant access guides. In the meantime, we created those because we have such a long wait list. But they are like you sitting down and using our tools, using our skills. And so you can get our steps to rebuild a marriage guide. You can get our steps to repair after argument. All the guides, we'll make sure that they are linked in the show notes. And we also have one, we're not going to tell you the full announcement, but we have never had so many people request this certain product, I'll say, this resource. And we are making it. It's going to be ready for you soon. But the first to find out about it are those of you who will have signed up or have already done our 30-day couples challenge or our steps to rebuild a marriage guide. And you'll see why when we announce the product, you'll see why it makes sense to have those two people find out first. So make sure you're utilizing our resources and our tools in order to advance your skills and be the best partners you can be. And with that, make sure you're tuning into more episodes. We're so glad you're here. And as a couple, really discuss these foundations that we addressed here and see, are there a few that we actually need to strengthen? Because we want to make sure that our foundation is rock solid so we can stand the test of time, that we can thrive throughout our years together. So we really hope this opens up some great conversation as a couple, and we will talk to you on the next episode.